Hello, thank you for stopping by. My name is Becky and this is Bex Reads, and today I am starting a vlog collab with Jess at Honest Fiction. So when Jess and I met at a Polycon, we were standing in a line with a group of people and we were talking about like who we had the most in common with book-wise, and Jess and I were like, yeah, we don't have a lot in common book-wise. Typically, the things Jess likes, I don't, and the things I like, Jess doesn't. So she actually suggested that we do a vlog where we pick out some fantasy romances that we have loved and let the other pick from a selection to see if we can find something that we actually do like in common. So Jess did send me a list of fantasy romances that she has really enjoyed for me to pick from. And I think today, since it is July 1st, I am going to start this vlog. I am headed to the beach for the morning. So I am going to start listening to The Wolf and the Wildflower. This is one that I have not read from her list. I know she didn't like another Elle Fields book. This one, I can't remember the title, but I know she didn't like this one. So it's interesting that she put this on the list of ones she enjoyed. So I absolutely know nothing about this book. I've seen it on Everand quite a bit. All I know is it's a fantasy romance. So I'm going to get into this today while I'm at the beach. Maybe I will share some footage at the beach. Who knows? I'm not the best at vlogging, but we'll see. And I will let you know my feelings once I have made progress in this book.
Through dusting the bookshelves when the wolf returned. Claws in hand, I spun to face the door at the sound of a female's voice, but it didn't open. Not arguing, but just failing to understand why secrecy is necessary.
I have a quick update for The Wolf and the Wildflower. I made it to about 25% yesterday while on the beach, and so far what I can gather from this book is it is about this, I think she's a fae queen who is in either an emotionally abusive, physically abusive, maybe just a cheating marriage. I'm not clear on that yet. But she has run away from her kingdom and her husband because he did something to her that she didn't like. And so she finds herself in this other village or territory or whatever, and she meets this man. I think his name is Scythe, but we're gonna call him Wolf because she interchanges what she calls him. Sometimes she calls him Wolf, sometimes she calls him Scythe, I think. She meets him in like a bar and they immediately hook up, and it's just like the best time of her life. And in 25%, that's pretty much all they've done is just have sex. So I'm not sure where the plot of this story is going. I don't really have any in-depth character knowledge of these two other than she is a queen and he is like this warrior guy who can shapeshift into this wolf. But other than that, I haven't really gotten to the gist of the plot yet. I gotta say, this is pretty insta-love on his part, really, because he's just like, I'm enamored with her. I've never met any woman that, you know, makes me feel like this. And she's pretty much just in lust with him. So I'm not loving that aspect because I do like a relationship progression, getting to know one another before we lead into the actual, like, sleeping together phase. And that's not what happened here. They just meet and hook up and it's great and that's all they do. So I'm going to continue this. It's not a very long audiobook. Hopefully it gets to the plot of this story pretty quickly, because if all it is just these two people banging one another, it's not going to have a lot of substance for me because I didn't go into this expecting like an erotic novella. So, you know, I want a fantasy romance, not a fantasy erotica. And this isn't even erotica, to be quite honest, because the smut scenes aren't really that detailed or anything like that. It's just they have a lot of sex. So I wouldn't even call it fantasy erotica. It's just fantasy smut at this point. But today, my sister is taking me for a spa day and a facial for my birthday. So no makeup, fresh face today. It's been a really long time since I've had a massage. I want to say 2019 was the last time I had a proper massage. It's been even longer since I've had a facial, so I'm excited. Thank you, sister, for going to the spa with me for my birthday. But I will check in with you probably when I finish this book and give you my final thoughts on it. So hopefully this video can only go up from here because I ended up giving this book 2.5 stars. It didn't have a lot of plot and it had way too much smut in it, and I just did not like the characters. The things that I did like about it was a fated mate situation, which that's one of my favorite tropes. I also really liked Scythe's character. I thought he was a good guy. He had likable qualities. He had just the right enough amount of possessiveness and all that jazz. It was dual cast narrated, which I appreciate, so I found some things to like about it, but overall this has a cheating trope in it, which is the thing that sets her off into like hooking up with Scythe, is that her husband cheated on her. So it's like, he cheated on you, so in retaliation you're gonna cheat on him. But then she goes back to her country and she like tries to toy with him, she gets him all aroused, and then she denies him. So it's like, if you don't love this guy and he's cheated on you, why do you keep doing these things? I don't understand it. She's a queen, but she has absolutely no fucking backbone at all. I was like, why don't you just kill this man? Or, I don't know, do something that gives you more personality, because her only personality trait really was the fact that her husband was cheating on her and she couldn't provide him with an heir. That is what she harped on a lot within this story. And eventually she got to the point where she actually did develop a little bit of depth to her, like kiddie pool depth, okay? She started helping the people in her country a little bit, but I feel like as far as like queen characters go, I've read so many others that are just badass and take control, and this girl just had no backbone. I could not stand her. I also didn't love the fact that she just strung Scythe along. Like, he had no idea that she was married. He just thought he was hooking up with a hot woman he met in a bar, and meanwhile it takes her at least 30% of the book to tell him that, hey, I have a husband. And then she ups and leaves him, so he's like wondering, oh, where'd she go? Why did she leave? Because he senses that there's something about her. He doesn't know that that's his mate, but, you know, he's got the feelings that he's never had before. So she's just stringing this poor guy along. And then she gets in a fight with her husband, and she goes back to him. And he's just okay with it. I don't know. I did not love the relationship dynamics in here. I am somebody who's just like, okay, if you're being cheated on, just leave. Do something else. Don't go back and toy with this guy. And she even said, she's like, oh, I instantly fell in love with my husband too at the age of 17. The thing I have with Scythe is just a fling, so we can't really make anything happen of that. So she's just very wishy-washy. She thinks, oh, I might still be able to reconnect with my husband, but I'm not in love with him. Meanwhile, she finds out that he got someone pregnant, so that puts a bigger divide on him. And her husband is just the biggest jackass in the world, because he's one of those guys who, like, he doesn't want her. Well, he wants her, but he doesn't want her. But he also doesn't want anybody else to have her. It was annoying. I could not stand the husband and wife characters. The only character I liked in here was Scythe. The plot of this book is very thin. It didn't really kick in until well after, like, 60-70% of the book, and by that time I already knew what the gist of the plot was going to be because of certain things that had been said earlier on. So when it happened, I was like, well, that's not a surprise. So this wasn't a favorite. It's not the worst book I've ever read by any means, but it just, I couldn't even come up with 3 things that outweighed the things I didn't like about it. So sadly, we're not starting off to a great start. But that being said, I am going to start reading the second book that Jess recommended to me. It's not actually in the list of books that she sent me. This is a book that I think she read after she sent me this list, and it was one of her favorite indie books of the year so far, and it's How Does It Feel? She thinks I'm not going to like this book. She's told me it's dark and unhinged, but I am curious about it based on what she said, and like a girl searching for a moth, she falls down into the unseelie court, falls in love with the unseelie prince. It sounds interesting to me, so I'm going to be curious whether or not I actually do like this or not. So I did buy this ebook, and I am going to start reading it. Probably not today. Today is the 4th of July, so my sister and I are going to go floating down the Delaware for 4th of July / early birthday fun. Hopefully, cross our fingers, I like this one better. Jess did say that this had like some typos and some like editing errors, so I'm going to keep that in mind when I go into it. I have really liked books that need editing before, just if I'm able to connect with the characters, I overlook it. So I'm hoping that's the case here, but we shall see. Floating down the Delaware. We'll see how this looks after I'm done floating. Hey, Beck. Well, that was fun. 4 hours on the river. And I did not fall in. I did not get my makeup all fucked up. Can't say the same for my sister, but that was fun. It was really nice out. The sun came out for quite a bit. And even when the sun wasn't out, the water was really warm, so. And now we are here getting ice cream at Oh Wow Cow. What kind did you get? Blueberry and cashew caramel. And I got blueberry, lemon, and pineapple with toasted coconut. I sound nasally AF because I came down with COVID again. Yay me. But because I've had COVID, I've just been laying around for the last few days. So I've been able to get some reading done. And today I wanted to feel like a human again, so I put on some makeup and I sat down to film this update for you. I'm about 50% into How Does It Feel? And I gotta say, this book was gripping and I am enjoying myself immensely so far. So this starts out, we are following Callie, who is 29 years old, which I appreciate the older character, thank you. And she is this botanist, and she is studying the migratory patterns of this very specific moth, because since she was a child and she swears she saw fairies, she has been obsessed with winged creatures. So she has taken jobs to help the wildlife, to help, find these moths and learn how to help their population reproduce and all that. So she is working in this small town and she's trying to get a job to go and learn more about this species when she ends up befriending this man who everybody calls crazy because he just talks about nonsense. But she ends up befriending him and she realizes that he is a scientist himself and he knows a lot about this certain mushroom that she is looking for that will attract this moth that she's looking for. And they become friends and he takes her into the forest and he shows her this. But when she gets around this mushroom that she needs to find, she starts to feel this very sinister darkness come over her and these strange feelings coming over her. And so this guy is aware of it too, and he's like, I need to get you out of here. It was a mistake to bring you here. And he starts to tell her things about like creatures that he's seen, and she's like, hold up. Maybe this man isn't as crazy as people seem to think, because I thought I was crazy when I was little, seeing fairies and all this stuff. So she starts to have this connection with him when she leaves her microscope out in the forest one night. So she's in this really nice dress because she was going to go out and celebrate with this guy who's much older than her. He's like grandpa age, so there's nothing romantic there. But she's in like this nice dress and high heels. She's all prettied up. She takes her John Deere lawnmower out into the forest to try and find her microscope. And she ends up falling through this fairy ring
into the Unseelie court, and she ends up like landing on the Unseelie prince, and he's like, kill her, take her away and kill her. So she's taken away, she's thrown into this dungeon with this bog creature that can shapeshift, and he like feeds off of her fear and he gets off on it. So he's like trying to hurt her and cause her pain in a very aggressively sexual manner. And she's trying to survive. And meanwhile, she's also finding out that the shapeshifters within this world, if they can shapeshift into animals, they for some reason want to protect her. She doesn't understand why, because as far as we know at 50%, she's still human. There's nothing otherworldly about her, but animals are drawn to protect her. So when she is brought to this room where the prince's assassin, who is a shapeshifter, comes in to kill her, he shapeshifts into this panther, and he's like, why do I feel this overwhelming desire to protect this girl? So he can't kill her. So he has to end up being banished because now he's like not on the same side as his prince, and he's betrayed his prince. And meanwhile, the prince is like, why is it every time I touch this girl, I start to feel things that I've never felt before? So that's as far as I've gotten. And let me tell you, it did not take me long to read 50% of this book, because I started it last night and I got through 50% before I woke up this morning. And I was hooked. Like for the first 25 to 30% of this book, she's in the human world and nothing otherworldly is happening, but the vibes were vibing. The way that this forest was described and this sinister feelings that she was feeling, I felt that. And I don't know if it's just because I'm like sick at the moment or whatever, but my heart was pounding. And I could just feel the sinister vibes coming from this story and this forest, and I loved it. I found like her talking about the mushrooms and the butterflies and the moths and things like that. It was talked about in like this very technical way. I found it super freaking fascinating. Her working in this like animal rehabilitation center and working with these animals, I found that so fascinating. For like nothing was happening that was super exciting, but just the way it was described and the way she was feeling and things like that, I felt that. So I was very amazed by that, because by 30%, like we hadn't even like gotten to like the fate aspect of this story, and I was engrossed in this story. And I know that Jess had mentioned like there were a lot of editing errors in like the version she had read, and I don't know if it's since been re-edited or maybe I'm just not picking up on those. I want to say it's probably because it's been re-edited, because I'm typically pretty good at picking up on editing errors, and I haven't seen any. This is a very engrossing story. I'm loving the characters. I'm loving the lore. I'm like on the edge of my seat, like wondering what's going to happen next. The Unseelie prince that we meet, he's a very deadly, morally gray character, which I'm loving, but there's also this like, is there a speck of good in him? Like, are we gonna see that? Are we not? Is there going to be a romance here? Because I feel it, but I'm not entirely sure. This could go in so many ways, and I am just so freaking curious. There's like hints that maybe the Seelie court is involved, and maybe like these fae gods are involved with helping her survive and her connection to those, but like I'm not sure. I love that this author isn't spoon feeding me information. She's devising the story and I'm left to pick up the clues and the pieces as I go, which I'm finding really, really interesting. So far, I'm loving this. And at 50%, it might be too soon to say. We'll see how it ends, but this is feeling like a 5-star read at 50%. Let's see how I feel once I have finished this. But so far, this video has taken an upturn. Yay. I finished reading How Does It Feel? And I really enjoyed this. I gave it 5 stars. And I can see where Jess would think I wouldn't like this, because it is a bit of a captor-captive, and that's not typically a trope I enjoy. I think if I've ever liked a captor-captive story, it's less than a handful of books that I've read. So it had that going for it. It is also a true enemies to lovers, which I appreciated. I appreciated that both of these characters were trying to kill each other, and that it wasn't just like two characters who disliked each other marketed as enemies to lovers. However, Even though I enjoy enemies to lovers, it is not my favorite trope. I much more prefer the friends to lovers dynamic. And this has a morally gray verging into morally black main love interest, which I can get on board with those kinds every now and then. But once again, the majority of the male main characters that I tend to love are the sweet cinnamon roll puppy dog, like besotted type characters. So it had all these things that I somewhat enjoy, just not to the level that I enjoy the exact opposite of what this portrayed. However, I was sucked into the story. I liked the overall vibes of it. Like I said, I felt like I was in this forest and it was just intense and dangerous and creepy. I loved Mendex's level of insanity. He literally tries to kill her despite the fact that he's drawn to her for some reason and he doesn't know why. And then when he does get drawn to her, he's like, she's mine. Whether or not she wants it or not, she is mine. Because he senses that there's something inside of her that is drawn to him as well. He is able to acknowledge the darkness within her and bring it forth and love her for that darkness that nobody else is able to, because she gives off this very, I'm a sweet, innocent persona, but he knows that there's something dark in her that he is drawn to, and he doesn't want to be drawn to it. So I loved that juxtaposition in his character. The ending of this book was phenomenal. If you were to offer me $1 million to tell you how I thought this story would have ended, I would have lost that $1 million, because I would have never been able to concoct the ending of this story if you had given me a whole entire year to do so. I was blown away by the ending of this story. It does end off on kind of a bit of a cliffhanger, but I jumped into the second book, which we're not going to talk about in this video because it is not a book that I read because of Jess's recommendation. I haven't really heard Jess talk about the second book all that much. She usually just talks about the first book. So I might do another video where I talk about my feelings on the second book because they're not exactly positive. I was hoping to read at least 3 books for this video where Jess recommended me books, but I think I'm going to end it here. I'm going to end it on a positive note because I found a book that both Jess and I liked. So I am super happy about that. Jess, I hope that whatever books you chose to read, I hope that there was at least a 3-star read in there. I am so nervous for this video because I don't know if you're going to like the books that I recommended to you because we have such varying tastes. But good luck. And I hope that you got one that you somewhat liked at least. But thank you for wanting to do this collab with me. I really enjoyed actually finding a book that we have in common, so you can add that to the tally. It's a very small tally, but it's a tally. You know, we're building on it. And if you aren't already subscribed to Jess, I'm sure you are if you're subscribed to me, but pop on over to her channel. If you watch my videos for some reason and don't like the books I recommend, you will definitely like the books that Jess recommends because we have very different tastes in books. She tends to read more dark romance, dark fantasy romance, white shoes. Every now and then she'll do a contemporary. And while I read those things, I just don't read them to the level that she reads them. Like, she is on this end of the spectrum and I am on this end of the spectrum. And every now and then, we meet in the middle. I will leave her channel and her vlog linked down below. And thank you once again, Jess, for wanting to do this collab with me. So with that, let me know down in the comments, have you read either of these books and what were your thoughts on them? But if you don't want to comment that but would like to let me know that you made it to the end of this video, could you leave me a, is there a moth emoji? If there's not a moth, leave me a butterfly. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and until my next video, go read a book that somebody who reads differently from you recommends, and hopefully it's good. Bye.